In this video, we will learn how to do inline for loops, or for loops in a single line. And the advantage of this particular method over the more complicated for loop is that you can, at the same time, do a for loop and create a list, all at the same time. Now, a for loop, a lot of times it takes multiple lines, 3 or 4 or 5 lines in order to do sometimes what can be done in a single line using an inline for loop. Now, if you don't quite understand or you're not 100% comfortable with for loops, I encourage you to stop this video and go to my video on for loops and while loops. Watch it, understand how those operate before watching this video, because you're going to have a solid understanding of how for loops work in order to understand what I'm doing here. Now, the advantage of an inline for loop is you can create a variable or a list at the same time of doing the for loop. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to have a equals, and I'm just typing into the script or the module over here on the right, and this is the shell over here on the left, so the output's going to come out here. So I'm going to have a equals, I'm going to start with a square bracket, I'm going to do I, and we're going to do some sort of operation. So let's say bring to the power of 2, so I to the power of 2, for, let me move my cursor, for I in range 10. Now, if you watch the other video, you'll know what range does. Range just creates an iterable object where it starts at 0 and it has 10 and it has a length of 10. So what this means is this is a for loop all on a single line. It's saying that for every item in range of 10, this range variable, I want you to do this. And because it's in brackets, it's going to add, each loop is going to add a new item to this list. Okay? So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to run it. And first I need to print it off, or else you're not going to see what's going on. And let's do that. Okay, so you have 0, 1, 4, 9, 16. So you can see that they're all squares, where the square root is increasing by an increment of 1. That's what we'd expect. So these inline for loops are a really nice way of expanding the output of range variables. As you might know, range variables, they only increment by 1, and in a positive direction. There's ways of modifying that, but really the main point of range is to only increment by 1. So this is a way of expanding its uses. Now you can do all sorts of other things. You can say, let's do the 20. So let's say we only want to do this, or we only want to do this operation if I is even. So I modulus 2, so I divide if the remainder of I divided by 2 is equal to 0. So what this means is it's going to do everything over here. In other words, it's going to add this item to the list if this is true. Okay, so it's going to add everything on the left if that condition is true. So let's save this and let's run it. And notice that it skips around. So it skips 1, it skips 9, so it skips every odd number. So it skips 25, 40, 49, and 81. So you can again modify this range by conditions. So this allows for a lot more useful things to do from the range, and this is just, it does more than just expand the range item, let's create another variable. So let me just delete this here. C is equal to 1, 3, 6, 10, 11, 15. Just creating some random numbers here. Okay. Now we can use an inline for loop to iterate through this variable C and extract the important information that we want. So let's create a new variable B, and in brackets say I for I in C. So in other words, I want you to add this item for each item in C. So add this item if I modulus 3, if it's divisible by 3, and I is greater than 10. And of course, this can be anything that you want. But so you can do, not only can you do a single condition like you did with the range function, not only can you iterate through an object, but you can also iterate through this list and have multiple conditions. So it's divisible by 3 and it is greater than 10. So we're going to run that and print A. We need to print B. So let's run this. Okay, so now it's going to be 15 and 60 because those are the only two items that are divisible by 3 and are greater than 10. So, and this is a single line. In order to do that single line by creating this variable, you would have to write for I in C Okay, so now we got the same result. So you had to do all of this to do what this can do in a single line. Okay, so let's keep going and let's see the other uses that you can have for an inline for loop. So to do the next part, we're going to import or from random import randint. If you haven't seen this kind of notation before, you can import random, and then you can use the random integer function of random, or you can, if you want to save a little bit of space, it's not always recommended, but if you want to save a little bit of space, you can just import a single item from single module from the random package. In addition to creating list from a single line for loop, you can also create dictionaries. So keys equals tuple A, B, C, D. Okay, so I'm converting this string into a tuple. What that's going to do is create a tuple where each letter is separated as an item of the tuple. Now I'm going to create some values equals, then here we're going to use the inline for loop to create a random integer for each item of a list. So we can do rand integer. We're going to go from 0 to 99 for I in keys. Okay, so in this case, I'm just using keys as an iterable object. I mean, it doesn't really matter because I'm just pulling an item from keys and then generating a random integer. So I'm not even using this I component. I could do range length keys, But that seems unnecessary in this case. I can just iterate through the keys because it has the same number of items. So it doesn't, I don't really need to do that. Okay. So now I'm just going to do D equals dictionary zip keys val. So this is one way of creating a dictionary using an inline for loop. It's not the fastest way. The next way I'll show you is even better than this. So I'm going to save it, run it, and then need to print dictionary. Okay, so you can see it creates a random integer as the value for each letter. Okay. Easier way of doing this is to just delete this whole line and put this in curly brackets. Okay. And let's, instead of I, I'm just going to use K just for my own sake, so I know that this iteration variable is a key. So we should do key and then a colon. So K, so first it's in curly brackets, which tells Python that this is going to be either a set or a dictionary. And then I have for each item in keys, okay, I want you to add this pair, key value pair. So you see I'm using the full colon, which is the notation in the dictionary that these two are linked. These two. So here's the K is the key and random integer is the value. So if I do save and run it, I need to change this to D because I'm not creating the values anymore. I'm creating the dictionary directly. So now if I run it, you can see it creates the same thing. Of course, these values are different because I'm creating a random integer each time. So there's a lot of things you can do with this. Now you can also create sets. So let's, instead of a dictionary, we're going to do, let's create large sets just to show you the advantages of sets and the advantage of doing these inline for loops. So I'm going to create a size variable, and just for just so I don't have to write the same number over and over. So I'm going to convert this. I'm going to create a large integer. Okay, so I'm going to create the first set. S equals, and I'm going to do a random integer from 0. I'm going to do size times 10. Okay. And I'll explain the logic here in a little bit. For I in range size. And I need to put this all in a bracket. So I'm going to use a curly bracket just like I did in the dictionary, and I'm just going to create this random integer for I in range of size. So what this is going to do is it's going to go through this for loop and create random integers and create a set. Now, of course, if it creates a random integer that was previously already present in that set, then of course it's going to eliminate that because a set only has unique values. And if you need to understand or review sets, I recommend going to the video that I have that talks all about sets and all their functions. But this creates a set in a single line. So we're going to create 2 of these sets. I'm going to copy this. S2. And this is just going to create another set that has different values, but is probably going to be roughly the same size as the first set. It may not be identical because the number of times it duplicates, it gets that duplicate value might be different for each time you create this variable. So I'm gonna save this, and just so you can see what happens, let me just let's just set the size by 20. And let's do 10, just so you can see what's going on. And then we're gonna print this S1. So you can see random integers here. Okay, let's move this back to 3e to the 4. And so we can ask some statistical questions here. If I create a whole bunch of random integers, what's the percentage of time, or how many times will S1 have the same values as S2? So if I do this, if the range is 30,000, how many times does set 1 include values that are also inside set 2? So that's a statistical question. You can actually calculate that question, but let's run a simulation to see what the answer is, instead of having to come up with the equation. So we have, we can do S1 and S2. There's also a function of sets that does that, but for shorthand, we're just going to do S1 and S2. That means how many values in S1 are also inside of S2. And then we want to just count it, so we're just going to get the length of that. So what this does in here is creates a new set that has all of the common values between these two sets, and then I just get the length of that to find out how many of those items are true. So I just run this, and you can see 2,677 of values in S1 are also in S2. And you can run this as a for loop and create a histogram to see what's the percentage of time that this occurs if you do this over and over. Now, so that's a set. Now, just to illustrate the difference in time of computation of working with sets versus working with list, we're going to do the same thing here. This, and we're going to put it here. This time I'm going to just do B1 and B2. I don't want to do, I'm creating a list, and I wouldn't want to do L1 and L2 because L looks very similar to 1. So I actually try to avoid using L. That's just kind of a note. Okay. So this is a different condition here. So doing sets would be as if I were pulling values from a jar, and if I pull 5 and I pull 10, and if I pull 5 again, I say, oh, that's 5 again, so I'm just going to throw that away. And then I keep on doing that, getting no duplicate values. Put that aside, and then do that all over again, and ask the same question. Now, you putting it in a list, on the other hand, is a different thing. That would be if I just keep on pulling an item out of that big jar, and I kept it in my pocket, regardless of whether I pulled the same value out or not. Assuming that this jar has duplicate values inside of it. So this is more of a common way that you would do kind of a statistical question, is you would do it with replacement. You're not tossing any values out. So, but it also comes at a cost. Okay. So, but a list is different than a set. I can't just do B1 and B2 ask that question. It has to be a little more complicated than that. I have to do the count, and I can use a I can use an inline for loop. I can do I for I in B1. So I want you to return the value for I in B1. So for each item in B1, if I in B2. So what this will do is it's going to return the value of I for every item in B1 if that item is inside of B2, is included in B2. So now we're just going to print count. So I'm going to save that and I'm going to run it. So you can see it returns this very quickly. Okay? But it takes a lot longer. See, now it just showed up here. It takes a lot longer to return to this because I'm iterating through a list. I'm checking, is it true? Is it true? Is it true? Is it true? Whereas a set has a much faster algorithm to calculate through that. Now, all you care about is whether I is in B2. Okay, so B2, it doesn't really matter if it has duplicate values or not. It's still going to return the same information. So you can actually just either type this in as a set in parentheses to just convert it into a set. Or in this case, it kind of does the same thing as if I just do S1 here, because this one's a set, it has the same function. So this should be a little faster, so I'm going to save it. So you can see it returns the information a lot faster because it's a set operates just a lot quicker that way. So so you can see that one, sets are much faster, and two, that these kind of to summarize everything that we've talked about here, inline list or inline for loops can save a lot of space in your code. You're not losing any readability. So I highly recommend getting used to and understanding these inline for loops.